This is Work and Learn Abroad. Welcome to this new episode of Work and Learn Abroad. Today we are with Marco. He's from Italy and he's going to talk about his story, provide some advices about how is working abroad, and also how he could cope with the environment that he's working in at the moment. So how you doing, Marco?
Not so bad, thanks. So I'm originally from northern Italy. I studied computer science there, and then I started working in Italy in a small startup. That was kind of nice, but the company was not going super well. Then I was looking for a new job, and I got like a couple of options on my table.
Did you think about working abroad at that moment, or were you thinking even before that moment?
Yeah, no, actually, I had a previous experience in Ireland a few years before. I had an English course here. So I remember that Ireland, for example, was often looking for a lot of people to work in IT. And so it was some kind of open option. I would have preferred like the UK, for example. But just in case, I put my CV online on a couple of websites like Monster and I don't remember what else. And at the same time I was looking for a new job in Italy, so got a couple of proposals from Italian companies, but they were not very exciting. It was still very small companies. The salary was not great. The actual training that they would provide was, I don't know, like they were not very clear about what would have been the future for me. So I was not really sure. One of the options that I also had was to keep doing some extra training by myself, and I was keeping that option open for me. And all of a sudden I also got a call from abroad. It was not the first one, but normally they were always looking for more junior roles, or for especially like support roles. Which I was not really interested on, and this role instead was for some company which needed some build engineers, so it was more or less what I had been doing. I had previous experience as assistant illustrator in Italy, so I did a few interviews with them and in the end decided to accept the offer.
When you got the interviews and then they did an offer, and is this the first time that you were going to be working abroad?
Yeah, that was absolutely my first time. Like before, I just had some English courses. I had traveled a bit just for tourism. Like I had never intended to work abroad, but I wanted to try something new, and also the salaries looked much more, I could say, attractive compared to Italian ones. And I wanted to see if there was also a possibility of, I could say, developing myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the problems in Italy is that companies are mostly very small companies, and they hire you and then they expect you to, if you want training, you do it by yourself, or they do very specialized internal training, but there's really no career path or anything like that is ever like given to you, which actually does not happen in Ireland or in other places. In other places you get a career path, you get choices, you get like ways to develop yourself. So that was very attractive for me. Plus another good thing for moving, or another reason for moving, was actually to do the experience in an international kind of environment. Like that stuff, even if I had to go back to Italy at a certain point, that is very well valued in Italy. So English language and the experience abroad, the experience in a big corporation is something that you can't really do in Italy in most companies. So I was looking for it, and I got the opportunity and decided to take it.
How do you feel to when you accepted the offer, and then you were thinking, okay, I'm going abroad, and you bought the tickets, or did they buy the tickets?
So they gave me tickets for the last interview. So I had the first couple of interviews over the phone, with my manager, with my future manager, who actually was Italian
Yeah.
as well. But we had the second one in English, and then they invited me to Dublin for the third interview. They paid the flights for me, so that was kind of nice. It was not very nice on the return because there was a big snowstorm in Germany, and I was stuck at the airport
Oh,
for
come
like
on,
8
yeah.
hours, something like that. But apart from that, like, yeah, they paid for me the actual flights for the last interview. And shortly after I came back home, I found essentially my mail the offer for the position.
And how did your family react, or family and friends? Do you think about it, like, oh, I'm leaving family behind, or I'm leaving my friend behind, going into another country, or do you was like, I don't care about this, I'm
No,
going
well,
to
it
going
was-
abroad.
It was actually a bit of a shock. Like for my friends, like I made a big party, just a goodbye party with everybody, and that was fine. And my parents actually, well, they were not very happy at the beginning. Like especially my father, I remember he was actually the one pushing me at first. Like he said, like, please take the position, like make the experience and whatever. But then, like when he brought me over to the airport for the first flight when I actually left. I think that's the first time that I saw my father crying in his life.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
so it was a bit moving. But
Yeah.
Moving, scary at the same time,
Yeah.
also exciting. So there was like a bit of a mixture of all sorts of feelings there. So
When you were about to see the offer, and then you see the offer, and then you compare salaries with the salaries from Italy, and then in Ireland, did you go through the, okay, is it enough salary to live in Ireland, in Dublin, or how do you react to this offer?
no, yeah, of course. So I am not really a guy who really goes and contracts on the offers that he receives. For me, once you give me an offer, for me that's it. Like, if you wanted to offer more, I should have done it before,
Mhm.
not after. Like I don't really like dealing after interviews or that sort of stuff. So
So you had your number before?
So no, well, when they came back to me after the last interview, they told me, okay, so this is the amount.
Okay.
I know that some people don't consider that amount as fixed, and they try like to
To ramp up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I don't like doing that sort of stuff, and it is very common in Italy. For me, it looks very bad even from the company point of view, because it means that the company was trying to cheat on hiring you. So I prefer to consider that number that you get the final number.
Okay.
So what I did was essentially checking the cost of life there. Actually, like food and whatever was very similar to Italy. What was very, very different was the renting costs, like apartments. Especially, I had absolutely in my mind that I didn't want to share apartments. Like, so that was the bigger cost that I was going to incur in, and so I was checking websites and starting to send emails inquiring for apartments and whatever. And I compared with some comparison websites to check what the net would have been like from my salary. The outcome was that it would have been more or less like the amount that I would have saved would have been comparable with the amount that I would have saved in Italy. But of course, here I would have lived alone. In Italy, that same amount was living, for example, in my parents' house.
Okay.
So, which is still very common even for people my age in Italy. So I said, like, overall, like it's better to go there. And anyway, you make the experience, which could be like expendable if you eventually come back.
Yeah.
So it could actually increase your salary when you eventually come back. And it would also be very good from a training point of view. So I decided to go for the actual offer that I got from Ireland.
Did you at some point thought that you were going to actually be a couple of years, like, oh yeah, I'm taking the offer, just going to be 2 years and then be back, or
Well,
never got a number in your mind?
No, the original idea was like, let's remain here for just 1 year, just the
Okay.
experience and whatever. But then you start saying, well, okay, 1 year actually on the CV looks very bad, and whatever. Plus, you start getting used to life there. Okay, let's make it 2 years. And then after 2 years, I was a bit getting tired of the place where I was in, because, yeah, of course, they were looking a lot for people, mostly because, they didn't have like a big attractiveness as a company. It was a finance area company, so they had problems in actually attracting IT people, and that's why also probably why they were looking so madly for people, and they were even accepting applicants from abroad. So the problem is that after being here, I started getting like tons and tons of emails from local recruiters. So at a certain point, I said, okay, let's try something else. And I got like recruited in less than 1 week in another
Nice.
in another big company. So it was okay, let's try this out. And now it's been like 4 years, I think, in Ireland. And
So far.
Yeah, so far. So it's still ongoing.
And how was the switching companies? Because, well, you got the experience in Ireland, you knew how the stuff was started to move around, right? So you knew the people, you knew what companies were in Ireland, and then you know how to do better with the people. So when you were switching jobs, do you have some kind of, okay, now I'm going for this kind of company, and I'm going to be looking at this amount?
Well, I was not really looking at the amount, because anyway, while staying here in Ireland, also because of the increasing renting costs and whatever, salaries went pretty high, and mine went higher as well. So I was kind of happy about my salary. The idea was just to aim for a more technical company. Like, as I said, like the company where I worked before was essentially working in the financial area. And that usually means that you work with older technologies, that there's like a lot less investment in new technologies, that they don't really have like a good culture of making people grow in technical. Like for most people remaining there, the actual career path is becoming a manager. But that was not really what I was looking for, at least not yet. Maybe when I get older. So I was looking for a more technical company. I think I found it.
And if you go back to when you were learning English, and then you went back to Italy, and then you decided to come and work in English, what will you say is one of the things that you should be thinking the most when you know that you're going to be working in a language that is not your native language?
Well, I don't think there's anything that I can prepare unless, actually, if you could actually live abroad for even just for a few months, speaking that language that you are going to speak, that makes a huge, terrible difference already. Just studying from the books, or even at school with your own language teachers, that's not really the same. Like, I had really a lot of troubles when I came here to Ireland because of English. Well, of course, part of the issue was the Irish stress, like the accent that they have here. It's pretty strong, and sometimes like they really matter words, like it's very hard to understand sometimes. It depends on the person, of course, but it tends to be harder than in other like English language varieties, let's say it like this. What helped a lot was the actual course that I had a few years earlier here in Ireland, and that helped a lot. But just by studying the book, like really I was coming here and my spoken English was kind of good, like kind of British English. The written English was sometimes even better than the locals. The problem is just really understanding people. Even now, like sometimes speaking with some people from some areas of Dublin, like there's like moments where you just freak out because you can just not follow, you cannot understand. It gets pretty hard. So you try to smile, you try to understand, from the context, but sometimes it's pretty hard, and you have to ask for a few times. It's a bit embarrassing, but remember this, like I have had like the same talk with some American people and with some British people, and they actually told me that they came to Ireland and they had the same problems when talking with Irish people. So that makes me happier.
Yeah.
So I'm not alone.
And culturally wise, when you do interviews in Italy, and then when you did interviews here in Ireland, have you found a difference in the way that you carry yourself in the interviews?
Well, to be honest, not much. Like they seem pretty
Much the same.
similar. Yeah, exactly. There's still always like the usual like technical part, the buttering of quick questions at the very beginning. There's then this. What they may have more here, but it's more because it's bigger companies, and they have more like this tendency of trying to profile you. So, for example, I had an interview with a guy, and at a certain point, like he refused me. It was like the final manager. Like I was speaking with the recruiter, and he told me like I was fine for all the other guys, and this last guy, this manager, refused me. And said like, okay, so did it tell you why? Like, did he give you some feedback? Oh no, he didn't. But just know this, like sometimes he refuses people because he shakes their hands, and if that don't shake their hands like strong enough, he thinks that you are some kind of weak person. You don't have really a fighting personality, and they don't want you. And there's this all sort of tricks and whatever. It seems to depend a lot anyway on the person that you have in front of you, like everywhere, like this manager who actually, study this on the books, but then really they don't really give really much importance to this, or they prefer more that you just present yourself well and that sort of stuff. And there's people instead who are just, like aiming at that. I prefer companies with first kind of interviewers, of course, but that's it.
And about living in Ireland, what could be you providing as advice to someone who is coming from somewhere else or from Italy even?
Well,
what kind of advice you could provide to living in Dublin?
I don't know what to say. To be honest, like it's pretty straightforward. The only problem right now with Ireland is the renting madness. Like prices are way too crazy. Unless you go really, really far from Dublin. So I would say to check online what the costs of life are before actually making a decision, because they ramped up in the last few years and they seem not to be going lower in any short period. So just check it out first, check like what your planned salary will be, and try to make an idea of how much you're going to spend, how much you're going to earn. Then of course it depends on even your actual situation. Like I've known Italians who came to Ireland and they were still very happy even if their salary was much lower than mine, for example, simply because at their place there simply were no jobs, so they would have had to move anyway, like maybe to northern Italy or to some other country. We found something here, they were happy. But from other areas of Italy, for example, of course there are jobs. So the salary increase, the how much you earn is actually an important evaluation that you do when you decide if you are going abroad or not.
What about the cases as insurance, or I'm not sure how it does work for Italy, insurance, like health insurance, and or even pension.
Yeah, that's a bit strange. Yeah, like in Italy, people are used at thinking that the state pension is enough, and also everybody is covered by a social pension that is given by the government. Actually, it's not free. You pay from your own tax money with it, so people think it's free, and they tend to think that it's actually enough. Here in Ireland, there is a state pension that you are going to eventually receive, but it's very minimal. It's like 900 euros, something like that. And the pension time is shifting towards the future more and more as years pass. What's probably going to happen is that I will die before I get to this point. But yeah, okay.
Anyway, you're contributing to...
No, that's it. But anyway, the good thing here is that, especially working with bigger companies, what you get is that often you get a company benefit, which is the insurance benefit. So you get health insurance, sometimes life insurance, and you also often get like contributions on a private pension that depend on your own private pension contributions. So that's very nice. You can start almost from the start to stash away some money, and that's gonna eventually follow you if you ever go somewhere else, like abroad or whatever. So I think it's pretty good. I actually prefer how it is here because people are actually forced into thinking about this. In Italy, people tend to be kind of lazier, and because of even like smaller salaries, they tend to think that, oh, we can do without it. And then when you start to think about it, it starts getting too late, you know?
Yeah.
So here they're constantly like ramming you, like, oh, you need to think about this, you need to think about this, like remember about this. There's a this kind of time limit for deciding on this contribution. Okay, so you actually think about that. I think it's a good thing.
If you find Marco 5 years ago, what would you say to that Marco?
5 years ago, so while I was still in Italy, right? So, well, what I would tell him is if you can move abroad, because honestly, like the working environment is better, it's heavier, less stress. They're gonna train you. It's kind of very nice. You get many more opportunities. You will get a much better salaries when you get my age, and yeah, I think that's it. And probably like rents were lower at the time, so it was much better.
Okay.
The only suggestion that I would give is don't search for the job while you're still abroad. Try to move there and search for the job in that place, simply because what you notice is there's a huge difference in how recruiters behave depending on you being already in place or you being abroad.
Okay.
I was talking with some recruiters here, and they said that they are very, very scared that they can actually spend time and have some guy actually being recruited by some company, and then that guy comes to Ireland and he finds that that's not the kind of place where he wants to live.
Oh.
He doesn't like the weather, he doesn't like the people, he doesn't like the society, and they just run back home. And it's actually happened quite a lot.
Wow.
Like even our company, I don't know if you're aware right now, but I was told that in the past they had like international students coming in for
intern?
Yeah, as interns, and they stopped taking in students from abroad. They only take students from
Locals.
Irish, not locals, it could be foreign students, but already in Ireland, like studying in Irish universities, because they are already used to the environment here. What happened before was that maybe you had like a lot of students coming or interns coming, and they would stay like 1 or 2 or 3 months, and then they would go home and not come back. So it was a lost investment.
Yeah.
So
Good to know. And any final advice that you can provide to the people, to someone there out in the world? We got people from I was looking at the stats of Indonesia and Taiwan, Russia, and some people from Peru. And any advice that you can tell someone who might be listening to this and thinking about going abroad?
Well, I would suggest, to be honest, maybe spend like 2 or 3 months in a language course. Not just for the sake of a language course by itself, but because the language course is gonna already put you in some kind of, how could I say, multinational environment. So you're gonna meet like people from different nationalities. You're gonna try to speak the language, and you're actually gonna live for a period of time in the place that where you're actually planning to go to live in the future. So that's already gonna give you some insight on the actual place. Sometimes you do that as a tourist, and you go and visit some place as a tourist, and you see it for 10 days, and you come back and you say, oh, that place was actually amazing.
Yeah.
But honestly, like, I've never seen like 10 days being enough to actually understand how actually living in a place is. Like, while you remain inside your like golden hotel rooms, or you just walk around and you visit new places, that's not real life. Real life, unluckily, let's say how it is, you wake up in the morning, you go to the office, you work there the rest of the day, have lunch with your co-workers. Sometimes, not always, it depends on the actual environment, because there are places here where you have actually lunch alone. The society sometimes is not really as it is
Open,
in Italy.
yeah.
Yeah, well, it depends. Like in Italy, it's very common. You go to work and you go to have lunch with your co-workers. Like, it's very common to have like common lunches, to talk a lot and whatever. Here, it's more, people tend to be a bit more closed. So yeah, so you get essentially, sometimes you get the group and you go to have lunch together, but you also, in the company where I was before, for example, it was not like this, and you
Mhm.
often were like eating alone. For some people, that's already like some killing their mood.
Yeah.
So think about this. If you can't live alone, some places may not be for you.
Yep.
But overall, like living for 2-3 months in a place is gonna give you a very good indication of how living for more in that place is gonna be. You're gonna go shopping. You're gonna see not just the good things and the touristic places. You're gonna see like the real places, how the real life is. So I think that's the best kind of experience you can.
Yeah, I remember back in Japan that we used to say that you go through 3 phases when you live abroad: honeymoon, denial, and acceptance. And as you can tell, honeymoon is that you love every single thing about the country. Then you jump into, I hate everything in this country
Yeah.
because you don't have what you used to have at home. And then you start to accept, like, yes, there's good and bad. And then from that point on, you
Yeah, but exactly.
live.
Just think also about the weather. Like if you visit a place, you could be very, very lucky and find some sunny days. And really, believe me, that changes your mood. Like you visit a place with the sun outside, a nice sunshine and whatever. That's the best place you can live in. Like you go home and you think, oh, it was amazing. When I came to Ireland, it was raining every day for. I think it was a very, very bad year because I have not seen like a rain streak like that anymore. But for 3 or 4 months, it was like rainy every single day. I remember that I was not even going out because in Italy you would see some cloudy day, some grey day, and would say, okay, I'm not going out today. I'm going out tomorrow because tomorrow is gonna be sunny.
Yeah.
But it was not like this year. You would have like to catch a moment and just go outside.
Yeah.
And at the end of the first like 3 or 4 months, like my mood was under my heels. Really, it was really, really terrible. And I remember the first time I went back to Italy, I was again faced with the nice sunshines, with the nice sunsets. I am from the countryside, so you get all that green.
Yeah.
Here I was living just among like these detached houses, all looking like the same, all grey or white. Why do we like grey or white so much in this country? It's something I can't understand. Like you already have the sky, which is so grey most of the year. Just paint the rest a bit of a bright, more cheerful color, but they don't. Oh, okay, so it took a bit for me to get used. There was like a bit of a crisis at the very beginning.
Mhm.
So I think it's very, very important to see like how like 2 or 3 months are into the place. Not just 1 week is not enough. Just the sunny days, just 3 sunny days in some touristic locations are not enough to understand
Mhm.
how the place really is.
How did you overcome that crisis? Or not a crisis, but that like moment where you are like, "What the heck I am doing here?"
Yeah, well, for a while I thought about going back, but in the end, like the salary was actually good. I was starting to get used to the co-workers, and I was kind of getting friends and whatever. So in the end, like I started visiting other people. Friendships, especially, are very, very useful. Like when you start having a few friends and going out actually with them, that really helps a lot. So that actually, yeah. And then I have to say one thing, like you have no idea, but I would have never thought that he had so much kind of adaptation capabilities. Like when I came here, I was a little bit like concerned, but after like a few months, I could actually adapt to the things that the things that I didn't like at the very beginning. like when you start living inside the place, you start to adapt very slowly. It takes a bit for some things. I still hate them, but I'm used to them, and they don't make like that bad impact on me anymore.
Okay.
But you need to resist for a while,
Yeah.
like the first impact is always very hard, and then it gets less and less impactful by the day, so you need to resist.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for the time, Marco.
No worries. Sorry for, I think we are a bit late, but
No, not at all. For the people that want to get in touch with me and to have any question for Marco, please write to leonardo.martin@pm.me. Thank you, and we'll be having more people telling the story about working and living abroad. Thank you. Bye.
bye.
This is Work and Learn Abroad.